Want to transition into more of these major headlines, including and especially international ones. The Middle East really boiling over this weekend here because, and you were following this all weekend, probably here on Live Now, that Israel pummeled Lebanon just today with airstrikes that, according to some reports, killed 356 people, left more than 1,200 injured. That was according to the Lebanese health ministry. It marked the deadliest day for Lebanon since Israel and Hezbollah ramped up their exchange of fire nearly a year ago. Remember, we are closely moving to the 1-year mark since the October 7th terror attack by Hamas inflicted on Israel. So it's almost been a year, but remember, that's still going on. But these tensions with Hezbollah getting the most bellicose that we have seen in almost a year's time. In the meantime, though, Fox News correspondent Mike Tobin, he's in the region. He has the lowdown on what Israel's strategy is and how Hezbollah can be defeated, dismantled, deterred, however you want to slice it here. Let's watch.
Lebanon says this was the most deadly day since Israel and Hezbollah went to war in 2006 as Israel rained airstrikes down on southern Lebanon, attempting to stop Hezbollah rocket fire, which has menaced and threatened Israeli civilians for almost a year. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke directly to the Lebanese people.
For too long, Hezbollah has been using you as human shields. It placed rockets in your living rooms and missiles in your garage.
To prove that point, the IDF released video spokespeople say show a home used to store a missile, complete with an opening for the weapon to be launched, and airstrikes followed by secondary explosions as stored weapons detonated. Israel took the step of sending electronic communications to tens of thousands of Lebanese civilians, warning them to get away from stored Hezbollah weapons.
We advise civilians from Lebanese villages located in and next to buildings and areas used by Hezbollah for military purpose, such as those used to store weapons.
Panicked Lebanese civilians created a traffic jam, fleeing north to escape the bombing. Lebanese officials say the collateral damage from the Israeli airstrikes include 2 ambulance crews blown up, hundreds dead, more than 1,000 injured.
What we've seen over the last week has been dramatic. The consequences on civilians has been huge.
Through it all, Hezbollah continued to fire rockets into Israel.
I feel more afraid, and I don't know what happened tomorrow, after tomorrow.
Word tonight that Israel targeted the number 3 in Hezbollah's chain of command, Ali Karaki. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant made the public statement that Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah now sits alone at the top, but that may have been premature. Hezbollah says Karaki is alive and moved to a protected space. In Tel Aviv, Mike Tobin, Fox News.
Mike, thanks so much. Let's bring into the conversation right now our friend, national security analyst and expert, and retired Marine intelligence officer, Hal Kemper. He joins me. Hal, thanks for being with us here. Definitely wanted to get you on while we cover this. And I think the word escalation might be moot or cliche at this point. Hal, would you agree that this is the most bellicose we have seen Israel and Hezbollah since 2006, since the last time they went to war?
Andrew, absolutely. In fact, the count of people killed, the number of injured, many were going back and saying they really hadn't seen something like that since the Lebanese Civil War, to give you an idea of how far back that goes. And that goes back to the early 90s. So it is incredible. About 500 people killed, and it's non-exact science. You got to remember, when they give out this thing, they say, 365 or 492, I always scratch my head and I wonder, how can you get such an exact number in collapsed tunnels, collapsed buildings and everything so quickly? And then over 1,600 injured. And of course, you saw what's happening in the South. This just massive exodus of everybody down south headed up north, taking up both lanes of all highways and roads. Yeah. It really is something, and you're absolutely right. It's the biggest we've seen in decades.
Hal, we just want to play out this from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This was his message to the Lebanese people earlier this morning. Let's watch.
I have a message for the people of Lebanon. Israel's war is not with you. It's with Hezbollah. For too long, Hezbollah has been using you as human shields. It placed rockets in your living rooms and missiles in your garage. Those rockets and missiles are aimed directly at our cities, directly at our citizens. To defend our people against Hezbollah strikes, we must take out those weapons. Now, starting this morning, the IDF has warned you to get out of harm's way. I urge you, take this warning seriously. Don't let Hezbollah endanger your lives and the lives of your loved ones. Don't let Hezbollah endanger Lebanon. Please, get out of harm's way now. Once our operation is finished, you can come back safely to your homes.
Okay, Hal, you heard it there. We were talking offline before we brought you on that this is a feature, not a bug, of how Israel conducts warfare, alerting civilians in harm's way before their operations take place here. So much so that you and I talked to, you just saw it there in Mike Tobin's report, that the traffic on Lebanese byways and highways was quite pronounced, was quite thick for people trying to get out of harm's way here. So Israel, with this message, this alert warning to everyday Lebanese civilians, I guess my question to you is this. With the number of casualties we've seen, are those all Hezbollah fighters? Are those all Hezbollah terrorists? Or is there unfortunately some civilian collateral damage here?
There is some, by all reports I've seen, some limited collateral damage, if you will. There are women and children, innocent civilians who have been killed. However, it looks, and I just say, I don't have an exact number, but it looks like that's probably under 10%, which is pretty significant when you're looking at where they're having to hit. The thing to, and this is what Prime Minister Netanyahu brought up, and this is a hallmark of Hezbollah. It's the same thing we've seen with Hamas down in Gaza Strip, is they hide where they keep the rockets and missiles and ammunition and bunkers, command and control centers, all of these things. They hide it in and amongst the civilian infrastructure, if you will. And so what Israel has been doing, they did it in Gaza, they're doing it on a rather grand scale in Lebanon, is telling people, providing the strategic communications message, which they're delivering in a lot of different ways. They are sending this via text. They're calling people's hard lines. They called, I think, the Ministry of Public Affairs, called everybody in the building and said, you need to get out of there. They've been finding every way they can to tell them to get out of harm's way. And this has become a staple, if you will, of how Israel does military operations. They've probably done this more than any military I can think of historically in warning civilians to get out of the way. And that's because they know where they have to target, but where they are targeting is actually burrowed into that civilian infrastructure. So they're trying to encourage the Lebanese civilians get out of there. And certainly from what we've seen, a lot of them are hearing that message. They are getting out of there. They're moving out.
Yeah. You know, Hal, I guess my question is, why now? Why almost a year after the Hamas attack here? You know, you and I were talking, we were citing the reporting that Israeli intelligence officials believed Hezbollah was planning their own type of October 7th attack on Israeli civilians and military targets in northern Israel here. Do you think that's why we're seeing this huge ramp up of activity cross-border?
I think the thing you're looking at is what are the enemies, if you will, the big enemies that Israel has on its borders? Well, if you look prior to October 7th, it was Hamas for the most part down the Gaza Strip, a little bit of the West Bank, mostly Gaza Strip, a little bit of southern Lebanon, but not much. And then, of course, the big one was Hezbollah. Yeah. That's the big threat. Both of them dedicated not to change the policy of Israel, both dedicated to destroying the state of Israel.
Right.
That's pretty far out there in terms of a policy objective. Is they are both dedicated to the destruction of Israel. So when I look at this, the reason that you're seeing the movement up north, and I got to just kind of go back to basic battlefield metrics, which is they have completed a lot of the mission down in the Gaza Strip. They've done a lot of military operations over in the West Bank as well to mitigate the threat that would appear there. But now they're very much scaled down to from where they were in the Gaza Strip. They've been able to move those ground forces up north, and they're now in a position where they can deal with Hezbollah head on. And Hezbollah does things like it did today. You know, as much as everybody focuses on the Israeli strikes, and they were significant, 1,300 targets were hit. There was also over 200 Hezbollah missiles fired into northern Israel, and that's what Israel's dealing with is basically this ongoing constant threat from Hezbollah. The thing to remember about Hezbollah is after October 7th, all right, on October 8th, they started firing missiles into Israel. All right. Yeah. Hamas was firing lots of missiles into Israel. Israel had not gone in to the Gaza Strip at that point. At that point, there was no discussion about Israel needs to change the way it's prosecuting the Gaza Strip or anything like that. They weren't in the Gaza Strip. They were still reeling from the horrors of what had happened on October 7th. Yeah. And Hezbollah immediately jumped in with this completely offensive action, firing missiles into Israel. And whereas that may be lost to a lot of the global community, that is definitely not lost in Israel. That when there's, it's always difficult to say who started this fight, but Israel looks back and they say on October 8th, before one Israeli soldier had set foot in retaliation or dealing with the aftermath of October 7th, Hezbollah was firing missiles. And with all the rhetorical flourish about, destroying Israel and everything else. So,
yeah. Hal, so it's safe to say the question I've asked you so often that whether or not Israel can walk and chew gum at the same time when it comes to Hamas and Hezbollah, that seems to be pretty evident right now. How much of Hezbollah's capability has been destroyed? Their command and control, their, psychology and morale as a terrorist organization here. Is this having a net positive effect if you're Israel? Are you confident and comfortable that this is doing what you intend it to do by taking out Hezbollah? I mean, is Israel's intention to take out Hezbollah completely here? And if so, are we seeing that?
It's interesting you ask that question. It gets into battlefield metrics. And a lot of times it looks like a sports game metrics. It's like, okay, what are the RBIs and everything else? In this case, it's how much of Hezbollah has been destroyed. Well, the question is, how much of Hezbollah was there to begin with? And generally speaking, they said 150,000 missiles. Now, most of the missiles we're talking about are shorter range tactical missiles. These are the kind of missiles that they would use in a very tactical situation, a standoff with an enemy force, or missiles with shorter range that can go into northern Israel. That's the by far the preponderance of that 150,000 missiles. With that said, I've heard estimates at times that maybe only 50% of those missiles are actually combat capable at any given time. So you can reduce that by half. Now, how much have they destroyed of that missile inventory? I think it's less about, I'm sure they've destroyed a lot, and I was looking very hard to see if there was an assessment today. Didn't see it. But one thing they have done is they've taken out the missile launchers. It's not just the missile. It's the system that you have to have in place to launch the missile. And so what they've been doing is systematically going through, hitting all these places that they know of where the missiles can be launched. The other thing they're looking at is the longer range missiles, the Scud-Bs, the missiles that have range that can go all the way down, basically cover the entire state of Israel. Now, so far, Hezbollah has not launched those, but Israel's looking at those very closely. If they do start launching them, they could cause horrendous damage. They could put 3,000 missiles a day, theoretically, into Israel. Now, if you're looking at personnel, and they don't have huge armored divisions or anything like that, but if you're looking at personnel, about 40 to 50,000 fighters, I think Israel has taken out of action somewhere between 10 to 20%.
Okay.
And I say taken out of action in that they can't mobilize them. You saw what happened with the pager attack, the radio attack. We had a little discussion on decimate, and it was almost exactly decimate, which was about 10%. And then if you look at everything else they've done, the big problem they have is what have they done to command and control and communications? And on that one, I think they've had a serious impact on Hezbollah and its ability to command, control, orchestrate, coordinate its response. So, yeah.
And of course, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, to see if the dust settles here. We were just looking at, this is a live vantage point right now there, Hal, in southern Lebanon here. So it seems like Israel sees this as an opportunity to push further and raise the price on Hezbollah until it becomes unbearable. So you and I have talked about this. Maybe the strategy is one of deterrence. Maybe this is or is going to have some type of deterrent effect here, Hal. But the U.S. is responding to this, Hal. So much so, I want to put this up. This is from Aisha Hasni. This was at the Pentagon today. This was this announcement that they will send more U.S. troops to the Middle East. And this statement says, in light of increased tension in the Middle East and out of an abundance of caution, we're sending a small number of additional U.S. military personnel forward to augment our forces that are already in the region. Hal, where are these troops going, and how will they help?
Well, obviously, any troop movement like that is a closely held secret. They don't want to say that. But generally speaking, a lot of the troops you're seeing are naval combatant forces that are moving in. A lot of that is to deal with intercepting drones, intercepting missiles that can be launched. The big deterrence that the U.S. holds in the region right now is not so much as what's going on the border, if you will, with Hezbollah, but really it's keeping Iran at bay and dealing with Iranian proxies and other places like, Iraq and Syria. That's really where our forces probably have the most impact, is really as a deterrent to Iran weighing in and maybe trying to join the fight, if you will. I think some would say we're already at the point of open warfare between Hezbollah and Israel, but keep Iran from rolling in like it did in April with some massive onslaught. That's really what that is.
I see.
A couple of interesting things, though. Part of it's force protection. Part of it's anti-missile, anti-drone. There's another part of this, though, which, as you recall, last week, State Department told every American in Lebanon, get out.
Yeah.
Get out while you can still get out. There will still be Americans in there, and there is always a contingency of militarily going in there and trying to get Americans out of harm's way. And I'm sure that's where some of those forces probably are earmarked specifically for that mission.
All right. Hal Kemper, we could talk to you about this all night here. There's so many facets and so many layers to this conflict here. But we are nearing the one-year anniversary of Hamas's onslaught and attack into southern Israel from Gaza. And it seems like a year on that it's not getting any more peaceful. If anything, it is escalating even further on yet another front here. And of course, we'll be relying on your expertise as we approach October 7th, 2024. Hal, thanks so much.